Captain Bobby. Captain Bobby, please report. Captain Bobby. Captain Bobby. Captain Bobby, please report. Captain Bobby. Shit. Where's this guy? Fuck. That's why you cannot hire a robot with AI, controlled by AI, just randomly control your spaceship. Captain Bobby. Captain Bobby.
I'm so sorry, boss. Here, Captain Bobby, Captain Bobby reporting. Captain Bobby, I'm so sorry for disappearing, but I was in the bathroom. My apologies, boss. What is happening? What is emergency?
Nice try, Captain Bobby, but I do have to check your system as robots do not go through the bathroom. Now, please, can you tell me why are we surrounded by huge spaceships and we are just following to the central one? Why were we going that direction? I just woke up and I just see all of this mess. I leave you in charge. Can you please explain me the procedure, Bobby?
They just wanted to exchange human information as they are traveling to Earth 2. So the Capitan will meet you in the principal meeting room. Sir, I will recheck it, all the security cameras, okay? So have a good meeting, sir.
Okay, Captain Bobby, copy. I will be in charge from now on then, okay? I will let you know and send you a report. Bye. It's a really pleasure to meet you, Ambassador. And it will be a pleasure for me to share you all the information that I got from humans. Starting for this podcast that I will start listening in a few minutes, and I want you to invite you to enjoy and listen to this podcast with me, and I can teach you a very special meditation that I just learned doing my research. So let's go and just listen, and I'm sure you will learn a lot about humans.
Okay, so today we're really going deep.
Deep.
Deep, right? Nuclear war.
Yeah.
Which is,
About as deep as it gets.
about as deep as it gets. And we're not talking about some, theoretical, way off in the future possibility, but like a real minute-by-minute scenario laid out by investigative journalist Annie Jacobson in her book, Nuclear War. A scenario.
And what I think is one of the things that makes Jacobson's work so interesting on this is she really goes into the weeds and tries to make it as plausible as possible.
Right.
It's not just like, oh, here's this, kind of pie in the sky idea. It's like
Right.
she really talks to the people who know this stuff.
Yeah.
About the weapons systems, about, even just like the psychology of the people who have their finger on the button.
Yeah, and the science behind the blast and the aftermath, which we'll get into. But it's that grounded approach that I think makes it so unsettling.
Yeah.
When you read her 72-minute scenario, you really feel like you're in the room.
It's like the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And this thing is unfolding.
Right.
And it could get out of control so quickly.
And it's like dominoes, right? Like one little thing
Yeah, like one little
leads to another, leads to another, and then boom, full blown.
And that's the thing about this. That's what's so scary, is that it really is this idea of deterrence.
Right.
Everyone's like, well, nobody's going to use these things because then mad, mutually assured destruction,
Right.
everybody dies.
Right.
But one of the things that one of the sources in Jacobson's book talks about is that whole system of deterrence, it relies on psychology.
Right.
It relies on people behaving rationally.
And psychology is kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, it's not always rational.
No, not at all.
So where does this whole, house of cards begin to fall apart in her scenario?
So she chose to focus on North Korea.
Okay.
For this. And, it's not just that North Korea has nuclear weapons, but the experts that she talks to, worry about what they call madman logic.
Madman logic, yeah.
Where it's like, okay, in the Cold War, it was like the U.S. and Russia, or the Soviet Union at that point, they both kind of understood each other.
Yeah.
They were talking, even if it was, through, back channels, but they had a sense of what the other was thinking.
Okay.
With North Korea, it's like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
Like they're kind of a black box, right?
Yeah. And so they worry that you could have a leader there who is just so unpredictable, who's so unconcerned with global consequences
Yeah.
that they might actually take the risk.
And she actually interviews Dr. Richard Garwin for the book.
Yeah,
This is the man who designed the first thermonuclear bomb.
right. He's the guy.
This is not...
He's not an armchair, quarterback on this stuff.
Right. He knows what he's talking about.
He's the one who's been, advising presidents on this since, the dawn of these things.
Wow.
And so he's the one who's really worried about this madman logic. And she uses him to highlight this thing, this idea of a rogue launch.
Okay.
What if it's not, a full-scale attack?
Yeah.
It's just one missile
Okay.
launched maybe without any warning, maybe without a clear motive.
Wow.
And that one act could be the catalyst
Right.
for this, global...
For everything falling apart. It's
Yeah.
not like you need a whole bunch of things. It's like just one thing.
And the thing about it is, it wouldn't take much.
Yeah.
She uses the example of a North Korean ICBM
Okay.
that could potentially reach the U.S. East Coast
Oh, crap.
within like 30 minutes of launch.
30 minutes, that's nothing.
Think about that.
It's less than driving to work for some people.
Yeah, 30 minutes, you could, have half your lunch in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then that 30 minutes, this whole thing could be set in motion.
So, okay, so walk us through then. What happens? So North Korea, hypothetically launches this thing.
Right.
What happens on our end? I mean, we have early warning systems, right?
We do.
Yeah.
And this is where Jacobson really gets into the weeds on the technology, which I think is really interesting. She talks about these satellites that we have positioned, incredibly far out in space that are constantly scanning, looking for
Heat signatures.
heat signatures, exactly, of a launch.
Right.
So the second anything,
Blasts off.
blasts off, they know.
Wow.
We're talking within, seconds.
Okay, so then what? It's like that old movie line, like, get me the president.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yeah. So it goes from these satellites
Okay.
to, these analysts
Okay.
who are basically trying to figure out, okay,
Right.
what is this? Is it a test? Is it a satellite launch? Or is it something much, much worse?
Right.
But they've only got a couple of minutes to figure that out. And in her scenario, around that 150-second mark,
Okay.
they get their answer. And this thing is not messing around.
Right.
This thing is heading
Straight for the U.S.
straight for the U.S. East Coast.
And that's when the president gets the worst phone call of their life, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, oh, this is not good.
Not good.
And this is where that 30-minute countdown, I imagine, gets really tight.
It gets real tight.
Because you would imagine that the president doesn't have that whole 30 minutes to respond.
No.
Right.
No, and that's what's so crazy is that,
You'd think they'd have time to at least consult.
right, you would think so.
Talk to their advisors, like, what should we do?
But from what Jacobson has been able to piece together, they've got maybe 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
6 minutes to make a decision.
Yeah. To decide the fate of the world, basically.
The fate of the world in 6 minutes.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Why is it so short?
Because the U.S. operates on what's called a launch on warning
Okay.
policy,
Yeah.
meaning that if we are sure
Right?
that a nuclear attack is coming,
We don't wait to be hit.
we don't wait to be hit.
We're just going to go.
We're going to go.
Wow. So that's a lot of pressure on that person.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens? Do they, get a big red button?
Not quite a button, but the football.
Yes.
The football, right?
Yeah.
That's always with the president.
Yeah.
The emergency satchel, right?
Right.
That's got everything that they need to authorize a nuclear strike.
Okay, so what's in the football?
So there's 2 key things in there, right?
Okay.
You've got the biscuit,
The biscuit. What's the biscuit?
which is essentially like an ID card. It's got authentication codes on it.
Okay.
So they can verify, yes, this is actually the president.
Got it.
And then there's the black book.
The black book.
The black book.
That sounds ominous.
Yeah, Leon Panetta, he was, White House Chief of Staff. He told Jacobson
Okay.
that a lot of presidents don't even want to know what's in that book
Okay. Yeah.
until they have to.
Wow.
Can you imagine that?
Right.
Like, here's this book, don't open it.
Right.
But if you open it, it's...
It's the end of the world.
Yeah.
So what's in the black book?
Well, Jacobson, she actually tracked down somebody who had seen the black book.
Okay.
A guy named Ted Postal, who was a former advisor to the Navy on nuclear missiles. And he described it as being like, and I'm not kidding, he said it was structured like a Denny's menu.
Wait, a Denny's menu?
Denny's menu.
That seems like a weird...
I know, right?
record.
For the end of the world.
Yeah, a little bit.
But his point was that it's basically just this limited
Right.
set of options.
Okay.
Pre-planned options
Right.
for how do we hit them with nukes.
Right.
And each option has like a simple little name.
Okay.
Like it's on a menu. You're just like, yeah, I'll take,
Right, I'll take option 3.
option 3, the Grand Slam or whatever.
Right, right.
And Postal is saying that what really got to him was how these options were just
Yeah.
so cold and calculated, and they completely ignored the human cost.
Right, right.
It was all like numbers and targets and, not really any consideration for the fact that these strikes would kill millions of people.
So you've got this president, right, faced with this unimaginable decision,
Yeah.
staring at this like doomsday Denny's menu.
Right.
And they have 6 minutes to figure out what to order.
Yeah. And on top of that.
Right, because it can't just be them, right?
No.
They've got to have people.
They've got advisors. They've got people screaming in their ear.
Do this, do that.
Do this, do that. You got to retaliate. You got to hit him with everything we've got.
Right.
Jacobson calls it jamming the president.
Yeah.
It's like they're just getting bombarded with all this information.
Yeah, it's like, how do you even process all of that?
Right. And so in that moment, even if you were, the most level-headed person,
Right.
the calmest person in the world,
You might just, yeah.
you could get pushed into making a really, really bad decision.
So let's say
Yeah.
in Jacobson's scenario, the president's like, okay, you know what? We're going to do it. We're going to retaliate.
Okay.
What happens next?
Well, here's where it gets even more messy, because now Russia enters the picture.
Right, because they've got nukes too.
They've got nukes too?
But wouldn't they know
Right.
that North Korea was the aggressor?
Well, you would hope so.
Right.
But this is where she points out this really scary flaw
Okay.
in Russia's early warning system.
Okay.
So, we were talking about our system.
Yeah.
The U.S. system,
Just satellite.
super sophisticated satellites.
Right.
Russia's system is a lot older,
Okay.
a lot more prone to errors.
Like what kind of errors?
Well, she talked to experts who studied this stuff.
Okay.
And they said that, you could have something as simple as like a weird cloud formation,
Oh,
or even like sunlight
no.
reflecting off of
Let's
clouds.
be kidding.
That could be misinterpreted
Wow.
as a missile launch.
That's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
So it's like, imagine
Yeah.
you're the Russian president.
Right.
You see on your screen, all of a sudden,
Yeah.
boom, 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 all these U.S. missiles coming over.
Right. You don't know where they're going.
You just know they're coming from us.
Right.
Oh, my God.
And you've got like seconds to decide what to do.
I can't even imagine.
And this is where, all that stuff we were talking about earlier.
Right. About madman logic and
Well, just,
just the psychology of it all.
the psychology of it all, the fact that the U.S. and Russia,
Not exactly best buddies.
not exactly on the best of terms,
Hmm?
there's a lot of mistrust there.
Right.
It's entirely possible
Yeah.
that in that moment, Russia sees those missiles and thinks, oh, this is it, we're under attack.
Right.
And they launch their own counterattack.
And not just like a couple. I mean, they're gonna.
Oh, they're going all out.
Right.
I mean, Jacobson's research shows
Yeah.
that they would probably launch everything they have.
So we're talking thousands of weapons potentially,
Thousands of weapons.
all because of one.
All because of
one little.
one little, yeah,
Oh my God.
domino that fell.
That's a lot to process.
It's a lot. And,
It's heavy.
the other thing about Jacobson's book that I think is so powerful is that she doesn't shy away from the human cost of this.
Right.
She talks about the firestorms that would rage for hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
Cities being reduced to rubble, tens of millions of people dead.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And then, not to mention.
Right, because that's just the immediate impact.
Right. There's the aftermath.
The aftermath is that's when the real horror starts to set in.
Right. To talk about nuclear winter.
Nuclear winter, yeah.
So for those of us who, aren't familiar, what is nuclear winter?
So basically, it's this idea that when you have all of these nuclear explosions,
Right.
so much soot and dust gets blasted up into the atmosphere
Okay.
that it literally blocks out the sun.
Okay.
And that causes global temperatures
Yeah.
to plummet for years,
Yeah.
potentially decades.
So it's like a volcanic winter.
It's like a volcanic winter, but on a global scale,
Right.
and potentially much, much longer.
And so she's saying that this is.
She actually talked to one of the guys, Professor Brian Toon, who was one of the scientists who first came up with this theory
Wow.
back in the 80s. And he said, this is not just like it'll be a little chilly for a couple of years.
This
is like civilization ending stuff.
How so?
Well, crops fail.
Right.
Worldwide,
Yeah.
you have ecosystems collapsing, billions of people.
Right. Because then you have famine.
Yeah, famine, disease.
Yeah.
It's a very, very bleak picture.
So is there any hope? It's a lot to think about, Where do we even go from here?
Yeah, it's heavy stuff, for sure. But the good news is, Jacobson, she doesn't just leave us there, in that kind of pit of despair.
Okay, good.
She actually explores some ways that maybe we can, prevent this whole thing from happening in the first place.
Okay, I like the sound of that. What does she say?
So one of the things that she talks about, this idea, and this comes from Physicians for Social Responsibility,
Okay.
which is this organization that's been, fighting against nuclear war for decades.
Yeah.
They say we need to make these things, these weapons,
Yeah, boo.
taboo. Like,
Bioweapons.
right. Like chemical weapons, you just
Exactly.
kinda-
Like, nobody in their right mind would be like, oh, yeah, let's unleash the plague,
Right, right.
So how do we get to that point? All right, how do we get to that?
With nukes.
Yeah, like, that's a good point. How do you, because
So they're already here.
they are, and I think that's, that's part of the challenge, right? But, Jacobson, actually, she went to this symposium
Okay.
that was hosted by the International Committee of the Red Cross.
Wow.
And it was all about nuclear weapons, and you had, doctors there and peace activists and, survivors of Nagasaki there.
Wow.
And, to be in the room with these people,
Yeah.
hearing them talk about this, it really...
I can't even imagine.
It kind of brings it home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is...
This is not theoretical.
Yeah.
This is real people's lives.
And Jacobson, she talks about this one encounter she had with a survivor from Nagasaki.
Yeah.
Who was a toddler when the bomb went off.
Oh, my gosh.
And just hearing this person's story.
Yeah.
It really, I think, what it did for Jacobson was it made it real for her,
Yeah.
This is not an abstract concept. This is about people getting hurt.
Right.
Like real people.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the message that we need to keep in mind. This is not a video game.
Right. This is
These real weapons that hurt real people.
So what can we do? I'm feeling, I want to do something. What can regular people do?
Well, I think, Jacobson, one of the things she talks about is we need to demand transparency from our leaders.
Okay.
We need to support organizations like the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons.
Yeah.
They won the Nobel Peace Prize a few years back.
Oh, wow.
For their work on this treaty to ban these weapons.
Wow.
We need to be having these conversations, with our friends, our families, our elected officials.
Right.
Because it's not going to go away if we ignore it.
Right.
It's not going to magically disappear.
So we all have a part to play in this.
We do.
What does this mean for, me and you and everybody listening?
I think it means realizing that we're not powerless in all this, We have a voice, we have a choice, we have a responsibility to try to make the world a little bit safer,
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah. Yeah, there's hope, but we gotta work at it, right?
We do. Well, hey, that was a lot to unpack today, but super important.
Very important.
I think this is something that, we all need to think about.
Absolutely.
So until next time, keep diving deep and remember, every voice matters.